to the Living Consciously TV show, coming to you live from our Denver, Colorado studios. I'm your host and moderator, Coach Steve Toth, and our theme today is, would you just have physical sex or rather have divine access to what's possible? Let me introduce you to our guest cast as well as our Relationship Evolution cast members on Skype, and beginning with the guests that are in the studio with me, beginning with Janelle Alex, PhD. Hi. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
All right, and also Rob Alex. Yep. Welcome to the show. Thanks, and they coming to us right from Denver, Colorado. Exactly from where?
Westminster.
Westminster. All right, awesome. So welcome. And we also have Ninan Diver de Rosa. She is part of our Relationship Evolution cast, and she is coming to us from funky, all lit up Las Vegas.
That it is. That it is. Do you know the temperature today is 85?
Wow. I'm jealous. All right.
Oh, no, it's too hot.
So we also have Jamie Lerner, and she's also part of our Relationship Evolution cast, and she is coming to us from Chicago. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks. It's great to be here.
What can I say about Chicago that's like funky, lit up?
It's not Vegas? 85. Yeah, we're like more 40 degree today.
All right, great. So the leading question goes out to Janelle, and it begins with, I have to set it up. So let me set it up. So how it goes is, so we have a divorce rate of something like 54%, okay? And I've looked up the statistics, and half of that is because people can't agree on finances. And the other half is because they don't have a good sex life. So let's talk about that half. Why do you think these humongous numbers, what is the core cause of people not having good sex?
Well, first, there's the biggest thing is a lack of communication. There's a lack of communication, not just about sex, but about everything. So the arguments start, and then plus people don't know what they want individually themselves. And if you're unsure of what you want, how are you going to express that to your partner? And then you have to have that trust in your relationship and feel that safe space, if you will, so that you can share that with him or her, and so that they're open to have that conversation and not come at it as an accusatory, like, well, you don't even touch me or you never hold my hand, and take on the responsibility yourself and let your partner know what you want.
Interesting. So my experience, and I only have my experience to go by, is that women have the keys to the gates of heaven. And
in England we call it, we're sitting on a gold mine.
Okay, and they know it, and they use it. Is that a good idea?
No. I mean, it's true that we pretty much, I wouldn't disagree. We probably are kind of in that spot, good or bad. Sometimes it's good. Sometimes I don't think that it's necessarily a good place to be, but using it, or, too often we hear about, well, if you don't do this, then forget it. We're not going to have any sex. And so withholding it is just absolutely just not okay. I mean, why would you do that? So using it in a manipulative kind of way is just, I wouldn't agree with that.
Would that not be after you're married or after you've been together a couple of years? Because at the very beginning, it's not like that.
I mean, I don't think that I ever used it that way, but
I
know people that have.
But is it that something because you have a relationship, and you start off going out and everything's wonderful and the sex is great and everything's great, and then after a couple of years of marriage, is that when the woman comes in and says, well, I'm not going to give it to you if I don't get this?
I honestly, there are people that do that before they get married, which should be a bit of a red flag to me before you would get married. But sometimes people just have that idea of getting married, and they like, oh, this is what we want. It's the fairy tale idea, instead of realizing that relationships, all aspects, not just the sexual aspects of your relationship, but all of it is a huge opportunity for growth and work. It takes work. It's not a fairy tale.
Right, I agree. So I also agree with Ninan because, several relationships that I've been in, it really starts out really good. I put my best foot forward and she puts her best foot forward, not just in sex, but everything else, the entire relationship. And then it goes on for 6 months, a year, or whatever, and then something happens. What do you think happens?
We all, every single one of us, somewhere has, what do I always call them? I'm drawing such a blank. Our neurotic tendencies, because we all have them. I mean, we all have those weird quirks, and we do really stupid things sometimes. And so when you're in that intimate relationship, the emotional intimate relationship, as well as the physical intimate relationship, they're going to show up, and that person closest to you they're going to bounce back at you. Your stuff that's out there.
And what has love got to do with all of this?
What does love have to do with it? Everything?
Everything. So isn't it interesting, again, I'm just speaking for myself, is that when I was in these relationships, including my marriages, I was actually felt that I was in love. And later on I found out that I wasn't just in love with her, but I was in love with myself and the qualities that I saw in her and vice versa. And then interestingly, I think, again, from my personal viewpoint, what ends up happening is we end up showing not just the good side after 6 months or a year, but we start showing the not-so-good side of ourselves, like our humanity. And that's when each partner kind of finds out, and I think it just boils down to, after that, can I live with, I think the relationships are kind of defined by, can I live with the bad stuff? Is it not so bad that, so if I look at it on a scale to 1 to 10, if it's not so bad stuff, it's like a 4, you can have a good relationship. It's a 6, 7, 8, you got problems. It's probably going towards divorce.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
I don't think there's any bad stuff. I think that what happens to us is that we start off in this relationship and we reflect all the lovely things back and forth to one another. And then somewhere along the way, we lose our connection with ourselves. And we stop caring for ourselves, doing the self-care that maybe was easier to do when we felt that we were in love with the person. And then we start projecting our own feelings of really not caring for ourselves onto our partner. And I think that's where all that miscommunication comes in. But I don't think there's any bad stuff. I just think, we lose ourselves a little bit along the way. And so how can we, get back to that wonderful, loving relationships with ourselves first, and then work on that with our partner?
Yeah,
well, and that's something
I didn't tell you, hang on for a second, I didn't tell you that Jamie is our angel. And time to time, she will just fly in and make everything right.
No, you know something? I think it's like anything. You're getting to know somebody. It's like a job. It's like a girlfriend. It's like anything. When you start to get to know the person, the man and the woman, you start to, understand each other, and all this lovely fantasy thing for the first 6 months is beautiful, and the attachment is beautiful. And then you start knowing who each other are, and it's, you start, like anything, you start understanding, and then you turn around and say, well, can I live with this? And can I live with that? And you start, comparing what you can live with and what you can't live with. But I don't think it's a thing of living with, that you're going to take on this thing that you really don't like. If that's there, I don't think you should even get married or date, personally.
Well, and I really so wholeheartedly agree with Jamie in regards to the fact that, and I say this all the time, you have to get in touch with yourself. You have to have love and compassion for yourself. That was a shift, because Rob and I have been married 10 and a half years. Yes. And it was okay, sex life, okay relationship. It was good, but it wasn't what we have now. And the biggest shift for me, and I remember the moment that it happened. I was in grad school, and I was doing, I was doing some studying, but it was about having love and compassion for myself. And the floodgates opened, and that changed everything. It shifted everything in our relationship on all levels. So I think that's huge, and yes, that does absolutely, I agree, make a difference then in your ability to communicate.
All right, so how often do you think people should have sex?
Oh, I think
Who gets to define that?
I think that's absolutely a personal choice
Yeah, I
for,
don't
per
think-
individual, per
between each
couple.
other. Yeah.
Yeah, it's between each
Yeah.
other. There's no
Yeah.
way that you can say this is how many times you should be having sex, and it's going to make everything all right. Because we have different personalities that we're bringing into this relationship, and different feelings and different likes and dislikes, and they're not always going to mesh up. And to say this is how many times, this is the ingredients for the healthy, happy, sexy relationship, you just can't do it.
Yet on the other hand, I don't think that we can say, well, once every 6 months is enough.
Right. Well.
Because that seems like
I
too
don't
far
think
out.
there should be a time based on it. I think it should be a natural feeling of each other wanting to be with each other, of not, oh, in 6 months I'm going to have it at 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Right, right.
God alive. I think that would be a
But
disaster.
you know,
Well, isn't
that
it?
is just the natural expression and extension of how we feel about ourselves and with our partner. And so in some ways, I mean, that could just naturally unfold quite often if we allowed it to, in inappropriate ways, of course. But yeah.
Well,
If we
I've
want
I've
to,
heard this more than once, that there are a lot of people that actually schedule sex.
Right. There,
What do you think about that?
there are schedules that demand that, where you can't be spontaneous all the time. There's couples out there that have very taxing jobs, and they only get a short window of time. And if they're going to have sex, that's when they've got to do it. There's
Or if you have children.
yeah, well,
Yeah,
we
we
can
have
attest
that.
to that.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so some people need that. They need that, and it would be great if it could be spontaneous every time. But sometimes you just have to say, meet me for a quickie in the hallway, and on the way to work. And,
Oh my goodness, I couldn't think of anything worse.
Okay, so
I
that
will have
leads
to be
into
ready.
really this interesting subject, which is really what the whole show is about. So there's sex, and then there is conscious sex. What's the
Right.
difference? Describe sex from both of your perspectives, please.
When you just say the word sex to me, that's just the purely physical. It's just the biological response, the actions that you take, the results that happen. That's what sex is to me.
And usually it doesn't take very long, does it?
Depending on the person.
Depending
yes.
on
But yeah, it can be over rather quickly if you just look at the goals, what you want to accomplish.
and how is that a problem for women that it's over quickly? I mean, I hear this as a common theme.
Obviously, it takes women a lot longer. Generally, I was, you can't include everybody in that because there's women that can get there very quickly also. But they have to have time to heat up, to warm up, to get their juices flowing,
It's
and
just like the
it
show.
happens much slower than usually. It happens much slower than what the men do. And again, I caution because not every case is the
Right.
same.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, the men are ready to go spot on, and they just think the women ought to be ready like that too, and they have to understand there's a big difference there.
Although if women could adapt some of the thinking that men do all the time,
Right.
I think we'd be ready much quicker because, we can learn to think about sex more often and get ourselves ready by thinking about it, unlike men who just, I think, naturally are in that kind of that thought process more often, just by the nature of your anatomy. So.
Do you think that men so much more visual and so much more activated by just the look of the woman,
yes.
and then maybe it doesn't work exactly the same way with women?
Again, we're generalizing here. I think generally men work that way. I know there's a lot of times that, things that turn me on aren't the visual, they're the conversations we have, the things like that turn me on. So, I can't speak for every man, but generally they are more visual
Yeah,
and
just
stimulation.
speaking for you is good enough for
Yeah,
us.
well, for speaking for me, I might not be your typical man. So.
Probably not.
But the man is the hunter. The man hunts. The man is the hunter. He's the one that goes after the woman more than, I don't know what is going on these days, but normally it's the man that goes after the woman first.
Usually.
I mean, she will make herself approachable.
Yes,
if
but
if she wants him.
Yes, but I
She
think the
will
reason
not.
why we're talking about this, Ninon, is I think it's time, and I think we're ready on a global basis to go through some evolution here, because because how it's been
You think?
obviously hasn't worked too well.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
there's
that's what you think, though. Maybe to other people it has worked well.
And exactly.
In Europe is different. We
Right.
think of sex completely different
Yes.
in Europe than the way
Yes.
you do in America. Totally different.
Absolutely. And so it's really one of the things that Rob and I talk about is we're here for those people that are ready. You know, they've hit that spot in their lives. They're ready for a shift, and they're aware of that, because not everybody is aware of it, and they're okay with the humdrum, or they're okay with just the way it is, because they don't even have any idea that there's anything more. And if so you can't. You know, what we talked about this when we spoke earlier this week about you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink.
Right, I agree.
So.
Yeah,
Well, that's why there's so many divorces, because a woman kind of gets in a place and then a man comes along that sort of gives her that little inspiration, and all of a sudden her little hormones are flying around and she thinks, well, there's a guy that really wants me, and yet I can't seem to get that want with my husband. And then she will go off, or vice versa.
And which is a lack of communication.
Right.
At least at
Absolutely.
the core, even if it eventually seems like something different, originally it was a lack of communication, right? Yeah.
Well, what do you think about, and maybe this is getting off on a tangent, Steve, if so you can redirect me, but what do you think about the idea that women now more than ever are having extramarital affairs or extramarital sex as opposed to just men? Because it seems to be just a huge shift.
Well, I personally think that women today are so much more powerful. We've really stepped out. We're in really in a more masculine role, because we're in higher positions. We have a lot more on our shoulders. And so we have these different pressures. And some of the guys, I mean, Rob's not like this, so I can't really speak for that. But some of the guys, that's difficult for them, especially if the woman in the relationship, obviously I'm talking about a heterosexual relationship in this instance, but if she's making more money or she's in a more powerful position, that can make him feel kind of, like, I don't know.
Insecure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Sexually and
exactly.
basically.
So how does that work when you've got men that are very masculine, and there's tons of them, and there are women that are actually becoming more male-like, like what you described, because women have figured it out that men has been in power for so long, and it's time to, this is what equality to me is all about.
But do you think that women
Is-
just are not more sexually free? Maybe it's not a power trip. Maybe we're just more sexually free.
I think you're
But
right.
I'm trying to
agree
figure
with
out.
that.
I'm trying to figure out
Yeah.
the balance, because where there's a lot of imbalance is that men are becoming more women and women are becoming more men. And can we do this in a way? Can it be done in a way through evolution so that we somehow stay in the middle, so we don't go off to one end of the thing or the other end?
Right.
Does that make sense?
Right, and
makes
I mean, I don't think it's a power trip. That's not what I mean. It's just that we're in these different positions, we're in these different roles, and so being able to blend those together, which is bringing wholeness and removing duality.
I think women are feeling more control of themselves now, more than they've ever felt before, and they now realize that, yes, they can do what they would like to do within
Yes.
themselves, and do not feel shameful about what you're doing and how you're doing it. Because when I left home at 16, it was kind of not unheard of, but it was definitely very, very different, and I was the black sheep of the family. But that's the power I had, and I think women right now are feeling that incredible power that I'm really no different to a man, and if I want sex, I'm going to have sex.
Right.
But I think they feel good within themselves of feeling that way, and I think that's definitely a new thing coming around with women. And they're not being obnoxious, their feelings are just coming out, and there's nothing wrong in it.
Right, I don't disagree with that.
Well, I think something we have to look at here too is like Steve led to a little earlier. The men are understanding that it's okay to be softer, or to be. You don't have to be the hunter. You don't have to be the breadwinner. You don't have to be strong all the time, and letting the women step into that a little bit. And
I think they'd rather like it.
yeah, I think it's great because we can go back to the Native Americans. They actually had what they would consider a third gender. They had a two-spirit, which was supposedly equal parts male and female, and this person was usually a great inspiration to the tribe. It was the medicine person. It was the shaman, or whatever you would call it, because they recognized the value in having that balance between those two, the masculine and feminine, even though I don't like to use those terms for it.
Okay, so So Janelle, what turns you on about Rob and vice versa, Rob? What
All
turns
right,
you
I'm
on?
ready to hear this.
No, if you're only
Be as specific as you can be, please.
if you only look at the physical, then his arms, I get all silly. And when he lets his, because he doesn't have a beard, but he lets it grow in, and he'll do it on purpose just for me because I like it. So he'll let it grow in for a day or so. It's kind of scruffy, and it's just freaking sexy. But then when he does, because I do live very much in that powerful role and that masculine role as a leader, as whatever, I do that. So when he steps in, though, and will kind of either just take control or take over, or at least allows me to step back from it, that is super sexy, too. And yeah, sometimes I butt heads with him and we'll have an argument,
yeah.
which we don't really argue, like hardly ever. But yeah, I think, and I guess the other piece is that he is so connected to his spirituality now, and which that's only been in the last 2.5 years.
Right.
But yeah, I don't even know if I want to call it sexy, but it's just it's beyond the human capacity of words.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. So what about you, Rob?
Well, obviously,
Just teasing.
her physical appearance is very exciting to me. I think she's a beautiful soul. Besides that, the love that she has for our children, for me, I mean, that shines greatly all the time. But one of the things that really turns me on about Janelle is the friendship that we have. We're lovers, we're partners, but the friendship that we can set up and talk late into the night, have these great conversations without that need to be right, that she's not telling me, well, you're wrong because you think this way, but to listen to me and allow me to express myself, that is
What's that emotion that you're feeling
That's
right
important.
now?
that is,
You're feeling some emotion right now.
oh yeah,
I feel it.
I mean,
feel
it's
it. What is that?
it's a wonderful feeling. I never, when I was very young, I didn't know if I'd ever get to this point where I felt this way about somebody. We grew up in a small Midwest town, and you got married and your life was over. That's what we were always told. so, and I always knew there was something more than that. And I found this wonderful person that I can have as a lover, that I can have as a partner, and that I can have as a friend. All these things rolled into one. It's like, I hope that everybody out there can
That's
find this in
beautiful.
their life.
Yeah.
You know what I liked about what your remark was, Rob, was that you said in bed at night is when you really sort of communicate of being able to understand each other, because that's the most beautiful place in your house happens to be your bedroom.
Right.
And that has to be the most relaxing place, whether you're single or married or whatever. But if you have that beautiful conversation at night when it's all tranquil, it's all quiet, and I think that's neither one of you want to argue, because it's that sort of time of day and the time that you can do that. So I think that's a beautiful place for our audience to understand. That's a great place to be to get connected.
However, I must interject that if, in fact, you have been arguing in the bedroom and that has been a place
Right.
where things have not been lovely, then that is probably not a good place to be when you're trying to reconnect with each other in that kind of a physical or intimate way, because I think then that becomes counterproductive and counterintuitive to the whole process. So,
Well, that's why I said that it's a tranquil place where you would not argue, because that's a place where you really should not argue, is in your bedroom.
Right.
That's a
Which is
great-
that is really important to understand, and so few people do that. Especially if you have kids, you head to the bedroom and you shut the door, and then you go at it in
It's
the
terrible.
argument way, and then you have all this negative
But
energy.
there's the thing called
so-
makeup sex.
In the bedroom where there's an intimacy.
Yeah.
But you still have that negative energy there,
Yes.
So you want to have a positive, safe space.
All right,
Yeah,
so Jamie, what turns you on?
well, what turns me on about who or what? About myself? what?
About you or about a man? Just in
well,
general, since I don't have you don't have a partner there, so I can't ask
No,
that
I
question.
don't. I mean, I do have a partner, but he's not here right now with me. What turns me on is I have this ability to feel people without necessarily seeing them. And I feel people all the time. And just vibrationally feel people all the time. And I like that. That really turns me on, that I could just have that kind of, it's almost an intimate, non-sexual connection. That's a big turn on for me, especially when people are open to that connection. So strangers, or people I know, people I love. But yeah, I like that. That's
So
a
you
big
do
turn
get
on.
sexually turned on by that?
I don't. I think that it could go beyond the initial turn on and turn into something sexual. I don't really let it go that way, but sometimes you can just feel someone, and by looking at them and they look at you, there's a glance, there's an energy that you exchange with people. And I tend to do that all day long. So I get a lot of my emotional needs met that way through connecting with all kinds of people. And I don't really speak a lot. I don't feel like we have to speak a lot when we're connected to ourselves and we connect with other people. I can't even really explain it beyond that, but.
Okay.
Jamie, do you still have a sexual connection with your husband? Because I know you've been married many years.
Yes,
and
I do.
Is it a connection that you enjoy and you both feel comfortable with?
I think that it's evolving and changing all the time. And I think that when you're married for so long, that you have to redefine it along the way, and then continually redefine it. And I think that's, part of the evolution of the relationship. But I do say every day we get up and we make a choice to be together. It's a conscious choice. And it's not a given. I don't expect that he's going to come home at night. I ask him, are you coming home tonight? Because I don't want to just assume anything. And I think when we leave the door open like that, then we really have an opportunity to every day have that ongoing conversation about, where is this going and where are we wanting it to go? And maybe we don't want it to go at all. And once again, I think it's that communication that becomes really the most important. So.
Yeah, I think she hit on a very important topic there, that it's constantly changing. You're not going to hit this plateau of, our sex life is great, it's going to be great for the rest of our lives, because it's going to change. It's going to change constantly. I mean, from one day to the next, there's things, that we do that, we just have to switch it up, because it's not going to be the same, especially if you do it over and over and over the same way. It's going to be mundane and routine then. So it's important to have those differences and to appreciate that your partner's going to change sexually, and for your partner to appreciate you're going to change sexually as you go through your relationship.
Yeah, got that. So Ninon, I have to ask you, what turns you on? You can't get by.
I didn't actually hear you. Cut out somewhere. I don't know why. What was your question?
Oh, yeah. I'm sure that's really convenient. So what turns you on, Ninon?
Men.
Okay, but what about men? What about men that turns you on? Be
Well, as
specific.
everybody knows, my husband passed away actually in 2004. And as of today, I haven't really sort of connected with, I'm not going to say found somebody because I'm not really looking, but I haven't connected with anybody exactly 100%. But I'm getting closer. But unless I have that chemistry when I'm actually talking to this person, whether I've known him for an hour, 2 hours, or 2 days, or whatever the case may be, unless I have that chemistry, I'm really, truly not interested at all. Because if I don't get that chemistry right away, I'm like, oh, get it, move on. And maybe that's because I was spoiled through my marriage. I had a beautiful marriage. And like Jamie said, I always called it like sort of every 3 or 4 years, things would change, that they weren't the same. Though you don't actually see the change, you don't feel the change, but when you look back, you see the change. And so things would change, even sexually, but we had a great sex life. And even to the time that he passed away, we still had that incredible connection. Not only had to be the intimate sex, but it was being intimate with each other, of actually communicating and talking, and that is just so important. And I'm now comparing, which is not good, men, with him, because I know what I had for 30 years. And now I'm looking at them, I'm thinking, they don't come up to the standard. I don't want to know, I can't be bothered. But no, if I could find the right man with that chemistry, and it has to be that chemistry, maybe their voice will put me off, or maybe the way they move or do something, I'm like, oh, good, get out of here. Not very good, but I'll find out. He'll be out there. He's out there, because there's a lid for every pot.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm the pot, and I'm
All right.
looking for the lid.
So I kind of treated the show so far for the first half hour just like how we would do sex. So we were talking about sex.
Right.
And now we're going to move beyond.
Wait a minute, Steve. Steve, what turns you on?
Oh.
Very good.
Good for you, Jamie.
I thought you were going to let me go by. Okay.
No.
Well, that's interesting because I'm very open about who I am and what I am. So I've talked about this on this show. I talked about it on my network. I talk about it all the time. I actually haven't had sex with another human being for 8 years. It's going on 9. So I kind of been going through this cleansing myself because if I look at my past, I used to have, I know Jamie is not going to like this, but I'm going to say it. I was addicted to sex. I thought I made sex equal love. So if somebody had sex with me, that meant they loved me. It didn't mean that at all. I didn't know. So I really got hooked on it, and I had lots of sex, like daily. And so now for the past 8 years, you know, I really wasn't that interested because I wanted to really find me. And so I can't speak from, because I'm a different person now than I was 8 years ago. 8 years ago, you just put a woman in front of me and I would be turned on. You know what I mean? Yeah. And now it's different. Now I don't think about the sex. What I think about is connection. You know, am I able to connect to me, to myself, to who I really am? And then can I connect with this other human being? And I haven't found that connection.
But I think that leads into where you're getting ready to take us in the show.
Yes, right.
Because it's just the physical sex.
So I can't speak from experience. Although I must say, because I've been in this work for more than 30 years, I've had glimpse of what you two are doing because I have experienced making love to somebody, and it was actually somebody from Boulder. It was a therapist, guess. I was able to make love to her where we merged. And how I would describe merging would be our focus was not really on sex at all. Our focus was on feeling each other, and I'm going to try to describe it. And again, human words don't do justice to this because I don't think we developed the words yet to be able to describe it. But it was like I felt that she and I was one. We were not two separate human beings. We were one. And I felt that I felt everything she was feeling. And somehow we ended up somewhere. I don't even know where. I can't tell you. Like, I can't tell you we were in Illinois because we were not on this planet.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
And the experience was outrageous.
Yes. So you had a transcendental sexual
Yes,
experience.
I had the experience. I had the experience, and I've done tantra classes, but I was so hooked on the physical that I think now, if and when I have this lady in my life, it will be completely different because I would not care about the sex. I would care about the connection.
I just have to point out one thing that as
Yes,
I'm listening
please.
to your story, you know, everything you've talked about so far has been sex. And when you were telling us this story, it turned into making love. You know, it wasn't just sex.
Yes.
It was you slipped, whether you did that consciously or not, it was a different experience, obviously,
very
for
different,
you.
yes.
So I just had to point that out because it really stuck out to me
And
there.
what I'm getting right now, what's coming in, is that it's not even human love necessarily, but there's a love between the two souls.
Yeah.
So it's not that you've fallen in love with this person, but there's this soulful love that you don't have to be with
It's
that
not
person
about
again.
the physical.
Right,
It
not
goes
at all.
beyond,
Right.
It goes beyond the physical.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Soulmates.
that's why it's difficult to describe.
Right.
Yes.
It is very difficult to describe. So
Until you've
What a
experienced
great,
it.
what a great experience.
Yeah.
And thank you, Steve, for sharing that.
Yes.
Yeah, certainly. So I can't wait to, have it again. And I'll have it when everything
least
gets set
expected.
up correctly.
right. So
All right, so how could you help our viewers to describe this more, and not necessarily just to describe it more, but what has to be present? Like when I'm talking about connecting to myself and connecting to each other, what does that mean? What are we talking about?
Well, being present. And I know that's easy for me to say, but it's letting go of all of the other stuff. I know there's a common, like, okay, I want to go into meditation, and then all the busy thoughts in our minds going around, and I can't let all those things go. And so even when you're trying to just get connected with yourself and just letting all the daily, especially as women, and I can't speak from a man's perspective, but I know us women have these lists of things to do. We have the kids to take care of, or we have elderly parents to take care of, or our spouses, or whatever, our partners, whatever, and our work. And so there's all these things going through our heads. And it's not always easy to let those things go. So when those things do come flying back in, and those ideas and those thoughts pop into your head, acknowledge them and just go, okay. And instead of dwelling on it, just acknowledge it, and then kind of hopefully let it go a little bit. Now, I think you asked me something further than that, and I kind of got off on a tangent.
Well, I think what's important here is there is a way, and I know there is a way, and it can be done because I've done it, is that I now am able to quiet the conversation, take the volume way, way down, okay? And I do that when I meditate. And I can even do it when I'm not meditating. Like when I'm in the present moment right now, believe it or not, I know a lot of viewers probably go, this guy's going to be crazy, but I don't have conversations going on in my head right now. I don't.
Yeah, no,
I'm committed to.
He's been talking to himself over here.
I'm committed to this conversation and being present with you and Ninan and Jamie and just the whole show. And I don't have all this, I have tons of things to do too. Trust me. But that stuff doesn't come up.
Right.
It's not there.
But, I think as women, it's true that we need to give ourselves permission to take that time for ourselves, because we do. We use our children and our husbands and our work and a million other things as our excuse not to take that time. Right. And in many ways, it's our personal responsibility to take that time for ourselves and to quiet the mind chatter and connect with ourselves and to care for ourselves before we can then go on and care for everyone else in the world, which, is what women tend to do.
But the more that we allow our light to brighten, and the more that we care for ourselves, then the better we are for every person around us, whether it's our spouse, our children, the cashier at the store. We then can light other people up, whether we intend to or not.
Yeah, you were talking a lot about the spiritual connection. You've gone a lot through that. I was reading your biography, and you were talking a lot about the spirituality and also about the about going to church and being sinners, and it didn't connect with you at all, and it didn't connect with me either. It does not. That does not connect with me. You go to church to actually to feel good, not to be called a sinner.
Right.
And I noticed you wrote all this, and you wrote about this, you being spiritual, and how most people don't seem to understand this spiritual side of their life, which actually comes into their conscious relationship with somebody else, with another man.
Right.
Can you elaborate a little bit on how you feel about that?
Yeah, I could get on a soapbox, so I'm settling.
Well, just to...
I was just like, I'll just settle first. But yeah, my parents were amazing, phenomenal, and I wasn't raised within our household like that. But again, Rob and I were raised in, no offense to the Midwest, but we were raised in a very, friendly, lovingly called a hick town. But it was a very small town, and it's very devout. And it just never set. I started on this path of spiritual seeking when I was 7 years old. So I'm the one that encouraged us to go to church, my family. But it just didn't set right. It just didn't feel right. I just knew. And then I had prophetic dreams, and I had a deep connection to spirit. And what I was personally experiencing wasn't what I was being taught within the religious sector that I was in. So it didn't make sense. And it took quite a few years to find out what, not that I think you can actually say what it is, you can't really define it, but to figure out what that was. And then, that changed, because Rob was Mr. Skeptical. He didn't have any interest in it.
Yeah, I didn't, I was very scientific. You had to prove it to me on paper. I had to see it for my own. I had to believe everything until I had a transcendental sexual experience like Steve was talking about, and it just totally blew my mind. I like to say when I was standing there when I had it, it just cut me open and everything fell out, and I had to rebuild everything that I thought before. And now I love it. It's this power that's within me to go out and seek things and to not question things, but to accept other people's experiences, because now I've witnessed that for myself, that I could have an experience that is totally different from what anybody else has had.
So you're free within yourself.
Yes.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I got this from your website. So would you be willing to share the 4 code keys to combine the sacred and the sensual?
Oh my, do you have any idea how long ago we did that opt-in, Steve? And we're doing a new one. Well, one is getting connected with yourself.
And how do people do that, by the way?
Well, gosh, I wrote a whole book on that. I really, it's a simple one, but I did.
Condense it down, right?
Give us the short version.
You know, okay, for me, as we mentioned earlier, and people that know me know that I danced most of my life, and I taught dance for, 20 plus years. So dancing is one way for me to connect with myself, because it's, for other people, it would be going out in nature. Rob likes to go cycling, so there's a good connection there.
For me, it's humor.
I was going to say, and laughter is, yeah.
I've got to have the laughter in my life, or it's not complete.
Good
So
for
it's
you.
just, it's that, it's what lights you up. It's what just makes you feel alive and like, that's that connection to your soul right there. So.
Okay, so that's number 1. Number 2?
Well, you're going to stump me because I feel terrible, but it's been months since, and I'm like, oh crap, what are the 4 of them? No, I'm serious. I'm like, nice. Oh well, this is being human, right? I'm in my human space right now, because it's not like I don't know them. I just because I have so many.
Yeah,
I'm like,
she came up with them, so
well,
yeah.
I might not tell you the right 4 if I tell you all of them.
Yes, you will.
Just
They'll
improvise.
come to you.
Improvise.
But it's about opening to and learning to direct your orgasmic or sexual energy, which is a big piece that we teach about, and how blending your sensuality and understanding that sensuality isn't necessarily sexuality, but blending the sensuality and your spirituality, and then when you blend those two, it creates magic.
Okay, so stop right there. So I learned this in my Tantra class, is that it isn't about the orgasm. And what's unfortunate is that for most men, and I'm being general, it's not true for everybody, but for most men, that's what it's about.
Right, they're
It's about
goal-oriented.
getting there.
Right, and I would say that for me, I always like to clarify that orgasm and climax aren't the same thing. You can orgasm during climax, but climax is that peak. Instead of noticing, if you're climbing the mountain, all these beautiful things along the way, and having these little orgasms or amazing orgasms along the way. Does that make sense a little
Yes.
bit?
Oh,
Without-
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, and what's cool about the experience is that it can go on for hours. It's not a 5-minute
Right.
sexual physical experience.
Right.
I've experienced it that I could go on for hours, and I'm going like, how is this possible? And I did is it called Kegel exercises? I did those for years, and I could actually control myself, and I knew when I was going to pop, and I controlled it.
Well, and that I actually wrote
it.
Yeah, well, I wrote a whole article on that, because it's about, guys, how can, not just the guys, women too,
yeah.
but women can typically, if they can orgasm, they know they can orgasm multiple times. The men usually will climax on the orgasm versus just reaching the orgasm and holding back from that climax. And there's a number of different techniques to use and things to do
Well,
that.
and one of the ones, I have to say this, but one of the ones that I like to use is to start for the man to find pleasure in giving pleasure. So often we're just worried about our pleasure, but when me and Janelle are together and she's getting amazing pleasure, that's lighting me up. It's not all about me. I'm looking for, I'm wanting to give her an experience like what I'm going to have. And it's funny that you mentioned Tantra, because the first session that we went to that, I hate to say I got in a fight, but I got in a disagreement when they started talking about withholding ejaculation. And I was like...
You said, are you crazy?
Yeah. Well, and I pointed out because when I ejaculate with my beautiful partner, amazing things happen in my life. For one, I get more creative. All of a sudden, these ideas are popping into my head. I mean, I'm not your typical guy that's going to roll over and go to sleep usually after. I'm like, give me a pen, give me a notebook. I got ideas for our products and things like that.
And saying
it's
he's
very,
the talker.
Yeah, you usually tell me, just go to
now."
sleep.
I'm tired.
But, you know, and so I was just like in so much disagreement. And I finally at least got them to understand that it's not right for everybody.
Right.
Because they were, when I went, they were dead set, this is what you have to do. And I was like, and I had to speak up. And
Well, I
unfortunately.
think that's a big piece of what we teach, that it is about your own experience, and you have to figure out what that is.
Right.
I mean, and that's a core key in of itself. To, again, I think I said that earlier, but finding out what you need, what you want, and what your relationship needs and wants, obviously with your partner, and what he or she needs or wants, but then what the relationship, as its third entity, its third being almost in itself, what it needs.
Yeah. So I think I can probably help you with maybe number 3. So I think people are not, in general, again, I'm just being general, people are not getting creative enough. Like, we forget that there is this thing called smell, and there's this thing, it's not just about our eyes. There's multiple senses that we can use. So there's smell, there's touch, and I don't know if you have ever used a feather to caress Rob or vice versa. Have you ever done that?
Well, I mean, one of our sexy challenges is
Right.
about all the different senses,
Yeah,
all
we
the
have-
different materials and different items you can use.
Yeah,
So-
we have a sexy challenge called Moods that is very focused on singling out those senses and how does this affect you. And you go through this whole process of changing smells and changing visions. You know, maybe you take the vision away, or maybe you know, the touch, like
Well,
you
even
said
the
with the
audio,
feather
the
or
sound
things, the
as well,
sounds
all
that
kinds
you
of
hear
stuff.
during sex. So
Well, just in general. I mean, because just we talked about laughter, but just to hear he was, because our youngest was saying something to him earlier, and we were just cracking up. And he's in the other room just giggling. I mean, Rob is just giggling up a storm, and
Right.
I just felt. I don't know, in a sense it was a turn on, but it was just I don't know. See, I can't explain it, just beyond those words again. It was just awesome. So it's the audio as well.
Right.
But you know I'm going to say that it's beyond the 5 senses.
Yes, it is. And the reason I
there's a
brought the
sixth, then,
senses up
yeah.
is because most people don't even use all 5.
Right,
you know?
right.
So where we're ripping ourselves off is right there.
Yeah.
So let's do that first, and then once we get used to that, then you can go to a new level easier. I
The
think.
sixth
I don't
sense.
know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so have you ever like covered up your eyes and give yourself a piece of chocolate, or give the other person a piece of chocolate?
Yeah.
I mean, I
Let's
think
do that.
that's kind of like the standard, you know, a little blindfold action is, you know, a good step out of that boundary for most couples. So,
But it's not too far
Yeah,
for a lot
it's
of other
not.
people. So a lot of people don't want to go too far, which is
Right.
totally fine.
not-
And that's okay.
Okay.
You know, it's a
Yeah,
whole
let's,
different thing.
let's not get too far. We don't have that much time in the show.
All our imaginations are flying away.
So when people start experimenting with all of this, let's talk a little bit more about the benefits. Like, really, why would you do this? Why would you merge with another human being? And what are the short-term and long-term benefits of doing it?
Oh my goodness. It's profound. The love is so much deeper between us as a couple, but it's beyond that. I mean, like I said, I've always been deeply connected on a spiritual level, blah, blah, blah. But what has transformed for us in the last 2.5 years, and how much more I have opened, and the synchronicities in life and the signposts, therefore, that show up that go, yes, you're on the right path. It's such an expansion of my consciousness. And I know I've said it so many times today, but I can't put that in human words because it's beyond the boundaries of our language to do that.
You're not actually inhibited about doing anything. You're just very open and very free. That's what the two of you have become with each other, very
Right.
open and very free, not being inhibited.
And it's that space, that ultimate safe space
Yeah.
with each other. Not
Definitely.
just, in a sexual context, but just
Right.
any time.
How would you get a couple out there that are sort of having a sexual problem? Neither one of them want to move, and there's this kind of problem which could actually end up in a disaster. But how could you actually, with an audience out there, that you could handle? What's the secret to try to get one of them or both of them to get that connection back again?
Well, if it's really a struggling relationship,
Yeah.
that's not who we work with. So it's not that we can't suggest something, but we would refer them to a wonderful therapist or so forth. But the first step is, well, okay, the first step's getting in touch with yourself, like we've talked about today. But it's true. And communication.
Communication is always.
Yeah, I was
And-
going to say number 4 is communication, because
Right.
you got to be able to tell him what
Right.
it is that you want, and vice versa.
Right, absolutely.
Because that's one of the biggest challenges people have. They know what they
Right.
want, they're just going to keep it to themselves. Well, if you keep it to ourselves, what good is it?
Right.
So how do they do that? How do they get to that? How can they,
Well,
break this
it's-
barrier?
It's really about figuring out what your comfort zone is. And I'm not even talking sexually here. I mean, yes, you can talk about it that way, but just in general, and then taking a baby step outside of that. And, being willing and vulnerable enough to
Right.
say to your lover, this is how I feel. And again, not accusing, not blaming. You do this, you make me feel this, because you have to own your own emotions. So this is how you make me feel.
Well, and I think you can also look for other ways to communicate, because it doesn't have to be words. You don't have to sit down at a table and talk to each other, and where you feel uncomfortable if that's not you. There's other ways that you communicate. If it's something that you're wanting to try in the bedroom, you can leave a hint to your partner. We've often suggested, creating a box and putting an item in the box, and then leaving it for your lover to find, and
That's
that
fun.
tells you, I want to try this, but I'm kind of scared to bring it up. I know,
Shy or whatever, yeah.
Right, right.
because I know there's. I'm not going to go into any details, but there was one thing that me and Janelle did that we didn't have any idea that each other wanted to try. And when we finally got the nerve
Wow,
to
I'm wondering
get
what that was. I'll have to be asking later.
But when we got the nerve,
Doing it later.
when I got the nerve up to say something about
Oh, I
it,
think I
and she
know.
was like, "Oh my gosh, I would love to do that."
I know
and
what it is
we
now.
spent years not doing this because we were just so locked in. What's she going to think? Or she would be like, "What's he going to think if I bring this up?" And because that communication was broke down, we missed out on a lot of fun.
The answer
Okay,
to the
got
question,
it.
Because it's neither one. It doesn't have to be the man, and it doesn't have to be the woman to start it.
Right.
It can be either one. So it can be don't wait for the man and don't wait for the woman.
Mm-hmm.
Just get that guts up and start talking, or
Right.
as you say, do something, or even just walking along and grabbing her hand or his hand, giving a motion of, I want to be with you, and I want to, and from that, any motion can make a motion start.
Very good.
Could I ask a quick question about the relationship that you have with your children and the conversations that you have with them, and if they're different than the
Yes.
conversations that your parents had with you,
Absolutely.
and how you feel that will help them evolve and
Yes.
Well, my son, we have two 17-year-olds. One is in Indiana with his mother, but my son is with us. And then we have, he's almost 6. So, my 17-year-old is in a new relationship. And I don't want to say too much because that wouldn't be fair to him. But he understands the amazing sacredness, and being a young teenage man, there's those hormones are rushing, but yet he understands the beauty and the sacredness and what can transpire and how you can tap into divine access through lovemaking.
Mm-hmm.
And he and I, mind you, he can talk to me about anything, and he does. So
that's
he
wonderful.
doesn't have any
That's
So
questions.
you advise children to be able to talk to their parents about anything, which I happen to agree with, and I think some parents to say, well, let's not talk about it, but it's
Right.
something that really should be talked about.
Yes.
But I caution on that, because if mom or dad have had some really negative feelings about it themselves, then talking to them might be the wrong thing to do.
Right.
So
They're
there's
passing it down, yeah.
Right.
there's a bit of a line there. I say
Yeah.
that gently and
So,
with love, but
so in closing, I feel that, because we are running out of time.
Wow.
So in closing, I would just want to say that we tackled something, a subject matter that I think it's, yes, it's very interesting, it's very sacred, and it's a big taboo in this country. Like,
Yeah.
you won't find many shows out there, especially in commercial television, when they would talk about it like the way we have. So I want to acknowledge to both of you to be so open and to be so connected to what we were talking about today. And same for Ninan and Jamie, and Jamie being the the one that always comes in and goes, everything is just fine.
Beautiful. That was beautiful.
Right.
And so if during this entire show we have touched, moved, and inspired you in any way, like if Rob has certainly touched, moved, and inspired me several times because he got vulnerable a couple of times, and I think that's really beautiful, especially from a man.
Absolutely.
And now I know what turns you on. And also I want to make sure that I thank all of our viewers, as well as, of course, Rob and Janelle and Ninon and Jamie. Thank you very much for being on the show and being connected to this, fairly taboo subject matter
Touchy, sensitive.
in America. Yes. And then I also want to thank everybody, the technical staff behind the glass and in the studio, for making this happen. And if you want to get on our website at livingconsciously.tv, you can find out a lot more about us. So please do so. Leave us comments and engage with us. And just want you to know that I love you all. And
Thank you, Steve. We love you.
yeah. And
It's been beautiful.
this is the evolution of humanity, as far as I can tell.
And thank you, Janelle and Rob.
Yes,
It was very
thank
nice of
you.
to
Thank
you,
actually,
guys.
Thank you so much. So go to livingconsciously.tv. Thank you all. See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, bye.